Good evening, gentlemen and lady. Um, let's just switch to the correct screen. That will help a lot. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, good. Right, direct current circuits. Now, direct current DC means the current is flowing in a constant direction. Uh, Examples of DC is batteries, DC power supplies, and so on, solar panels. Alternating current, AC, is like you'll find in the wall, main supply, where the direction of the voltage switches 50 times a second from positive to negative. Now, we'll see later that it's possible to convert AC into DC. And we do it regularly as radio amateurs to power our radios from mains. DC circuit has got a positive and a negative terminal. And then, of course, we work with conventional flow. But there is one section here where they refer to electron flow, and that confuses the argument they're trying to bring across. But after reading the explanation, a person understands that. Now, the term voltage is commonly used, but you will find, and I don't want you to get flustered when you see E equals VR. I mean, E equals IR. It's the same thing. It's actually electric potential difference is E. So voltage and E is the same thing. And we did encounter that in the book somewhere that they use, instead of the V, they use the E. And if you don't know that, it will most definitely confuse you. Now, there was a German physicist, Gustav Kirchhoff. He lived from 1824 to 1887, and he formulated two simple laws. Now, the first one is about current. And at any point in a circuit where two or more conductors are joined, the sum of the currents flowing into the point is equal to the sum of the currents flowing away from that point. Now, what that basically means that if we have, for argument's sake, 10 amp flowing in here, and we've got two resistors of equal value, the current will split 5 around here, 5 around there, and they will combine again, and it will once again be 10 amps. So what we need to remember is whatever goes in this side comes out that side. And that's what they basically explain here for you. This is not a complete circuit because there's no power source, and this is known as a current divider. But we're gonna do this further on, and then it will make better sense. Once you start to do the calculations and there's figures involved, then it becomes easier to understand that. They also use the analogy of water pipe. The more water, the thicker the pipe, the more the water. And then if you split it into two thinner pipes, then the water will split and go in both directions. Um, I also use the analogy of if you put or you have a pipe with a bunch of marbles in, and that pipe is packed from side to side. When you push one marble in on the one side, one pops on out on the other side. So the electrons are the same. When you pop one in one side, there's too many in the pipe, and the one falls out on the other side. Okay, that's still the water explanation. Here they basically say I1 plus I2 equals I out. That I don't know. Is there anybody that do not understand that? Right. Then he made a second law. The voltage between any 2 points in the circuit is equal to the sum of the voltage drop along any path connecting those points. So if we have a battery, this is the symbol for a battery, and the longer line is the positive and the shorter line is the negative. This particular one will represent a 2-cell battery. For argument's sake, this battery is 10 volts. If we measure here, we're going to measure 10 volts on that side and 0 volts on this side. So the total voltage drop across these resistors is 10 volts. And if we measure at this point and that point, we're going to also measure 10 volts. And we know that V equals IR. So if we have the voltage, we can calculate the rest of the circuit. But this will make more sense when we start to add numbers to it. And here's the explanation that I just said now of this illustration they've got here. The potential difference across a component like a resistor caused by the current flowing through the component. Okay, let's read that again. Voltage drop. The potential difference across a component like a resistor caused by the current flowing through it. So the voltage drop is caused by the current flowing through the resistor. I think that's what they're trying to say there. Let's just look on my script notes because I've underlined the more important parts. Okay, we pause that. Now we get to the more confusing one. The sum of the voltage drops around any closed circuit is 0. Now this is where it gets confusing. Is because I just said that I measure 10 volts here and I measure 10 volts there, and the sum is 0. I mean, the sum is 10. But here they say the opposite. Did I pause it now? Right. So if you read this explanation, what they actually refer to here is because it's a negative voltage. So you actually add your voltage drops to the voltage. So say for argument's sake, we've got 2 times 5 volt voltage drop in the two resistors. We'll have, argument's sake, minus 10 electron volts plus 5 plus 5 gives you 0. So that's how they get to the 0. But you will not, you won't be asked what did Kirchhoff say in his second law. They won't ask the question like that. They will expect from you to do a mathematical calculation or they will ask you in a circuit, the current going into the circuit is equal to the current going out of the circuit, or they will, or the second option would be the current going into the circuit will not be equal to the current coming out of the circuit, and then the two other options would be completely impossible. And that's the type of question they will ask you. They won't actually ask you to say the actual or dates or any nonsense like that. What they're interested in is to see whether you understand the concept and you can do the calculation. Right now, we know what's going on in Ohm's law, and we sort of know what's on with Kirchhoff's law. So now we're going to proceed to resistors in series. Now, resistors in series, you add together, and then resistors in parallel has got a different calculation. And you've got to remember that. And when you get to capacitors, you know that capacitors and resistors, the calculation is exactly the opposite. So in capacitors, series capacitors, you'll use the parallel resistor calculation and vice versa, but we'll get there. I'm just mentioning that. It's an easy way to remember that, is that resistors are like this and capacitors are the opposite. So then you've got that. Right. So whatever the current is that comes out here comes out there. So the current anywhere in the circuit is the same. When we have resistors in series, we add the resistors together. So these two become one resistor. And from there, if we have the voltage, we can calculate the current. And then, of course, from there, we'll get to power in DC circuits. From there, you can also calculate the amount of power that is used by this particular circuit. They haven't given us any figures here, so there's no calculation to do. What they basically say is that the voltage drop, again, you'll measure full voltage over here, and if you bring your positive lead in a multimeter down here, you'll measure no voltage. Means that there's a whatever voltage is here isn't here, so it must be used up over here. Hopefully you can see my mouse pointer, because I use that to show, but maybe I must rather describe V1 and V2, or R1 and R2. Okay, this is for interest only. Won't be in the exam, so I'm going to skip that. We're not going to waste our time with things that won't be there. Right, for example, if three resistors with values 1 kilo ohm, 2 kilo ohm, and 4 kilo ohm were connected in series, the combined resistance would be 7 kilo ohms. So you add 1, 2, and 4 together, and that gives you 7. That is pretty straightforward. Uh, Not very difficult. Now, when we get to parallel circuits, the calculation is slightly different. A person would use a parallel circuit. One reason is that you don't have a resistor that can handle the current that is needed or the power that's needed. But if you put two next to each other, they will share the work and the circuit will function. That's the one reason. Now I forgot what the other one was that I wanted to say. It's gone. Let's carry on. Right, here they show two resistors connected in parallel. We know that all the current that comes in here splits up here and get is added together when it comes out again. Whatever goes in there comes out here. And then they say this is for interest only, so you can go and read through this, but this won't be part of the exam. But this is. Okay, right. So this is the calculation for resistors in parallel. So they've used R parallel. It's actually the correct way of writing it is RT, resistor total, equals 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. And you carry on for as many resistors that you have in parallel. So I think carry on infinitely and you'll never actually finish the calculation then, but you can have 100 resistors here being R99, R100, exactly the same. When two or more resistors are connected in parallel, the reciprocal of the equivalent parallel resistance is the sum of the reciprocal of the individual resistances. Now that's a whole mouthful, but when we start doing the calculation, it becomes a lot easier. Let's get a calculator closer. No, wrong button. Right button. Cool. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. One way, okay, first let me just show you this. If I say 1 divided by 220 equals, we get that. That's that part. If I say 220 to the minus 1, so that tells me those two are exactly the same. Right, so this is how I do this. So we take 220 1 plus 330. Right, the answer is correct. Another way of doing it is like this. Right, I'm going to make a deliberate mistake. We're going to get the wrong answer. And I want to see if you know why. Right, we get the wrong answer. The reason for that is I must put another set of brackets because I want to do this calculation first before I divide the calculation or 1 by the calculation. So if I go there and I add a bracket in there and there, get the correct answer. And then, of course, you can also do this whole thing that they've done here, but it's unnecessary. I would suggest that you practice with your calculator and be familiar with your calculator. Sometimes in the exam, they'll give you things that you can calculate in your head. Um, I don't like. I advise people to rather use the calculator because you get the same effect like jumping to conclusions. Um, Sometimes you think you've got the right answer and you mark the wrong one, but if you do the calculation, you realize, but I'm on the wrong. I don't have the. I don't. I'm not right. So I always advise there's enough time. There's 3 hours. With the last exam, everybody finished it within the first hour. I don't know whether we said you have to sit for at least an hour. And but when the first hour passed, virtually everybody was finished. And I think the guy that took the longest wrote an hour in 15 minutes. So there's plenty of time. So you don't have to rush. You can calculate, think, and recalculate every single uh, calculation over and over and make sure that you've got it right. This will most definitely be there in the exam. You will get one of these, and then of course you can change the values, add more resistors. Um, an easy way, if you use two resistors of equal value, they will be half the value that you use. So if we use, for argument's sake, a say a 10 ohm resistor, two 10 ohm resistors in parallel, we know that it would be 5 ohm resistance. What did I do wrong?
One equals divided by in the beginning.
Let's see here, because here we did that. Yeah,
Mm.
that's my problem. Those aren't supposed to be there. There we go. Right. So, good way to check whether you've got the right formula. If you calculate a known value and you get the wrong answer, you know it's the formula you're using is wrong. And obviously, if you get the right answer, then you know your formula is right. So you've got to practice this. It's one of those. They obviously give you different values, but good to know how to do it. So let me just take the calculator out of the way. You all know what is a dummy load. It, uh, P? Peter. Okay, Peter laat vaai dat ons please ask the question, not answer the question.
Yeah, when it comes to formulas, they're going to give you a formula sheet as well. So you just need to know which formula goes with which calculations.
Correct. Sorry, I forgot to say that. Thanks, Peter. So you don't have to know these formulas. You got a formula sheet, like Peter said. You must just know where to use it. So the dummy load is a high-powered resistor. We connect it instead of an antenna so that we don't transmit when we want to set up our system, tune our tuner and our transmitter, and set the wattage and things like that so that we don't disturb other people. But dummy loads are expensive, so you can build your own. We know that we're not supposed to use wire wound resistors. You get a special type of resistor um, that's also very difficult to get hold of in South Africa. But for it's easier to buy the commercial dummy load. But if you can get your hands on the non-inductive resistors, you can build your own one. So in this case, this oak can only get hold of 2-watt resistors, and he needs a 100-watt dummy load. So he'll need 50 of those 2-watt resistors to make it up. And they tell us here that it's 2,500 ohms. 50 of them will make up 50 ohm. So we can grab our calculator and we can say, if we take 50, do that, we divide that by 100, no, not 100, 100, is it right? No, it's 50. Because we know we need 50 resistors, so it's 50 ohms divided by 50 resistors equals that. And we do that. And indeed, there we get the correct answer, 2,500 ohm, which would be the same as a 2K5 or a 2.5K resistor, as they say there. Yeah, you also want to shield. So you'll see that if you look at a dummy load, or as I call it, homebrew dummy load, they usually put it in a paint tin in transformer oil. So you want to shield the dummy load so that no RF can get out there, because otherwise you cause interference. If you just take my calculator out of the way again. Yeah, they explain to you how to build it if you want to. You can go and read through that. Now, this is a voltage divider, and this is something we regularly use when you, for argument's sake, want to build yourself a digital voltmeter. You've got your PIC microchip or your Arduino, and you want to measure 12 volts. But your analog input on the Arduino is maximum 5 volts. So now you need a voltage divider so that you can use a percentage and a ratio of the full voltage on your Arduino without the smoke escaping. So that is where you're going to use a voltage divider. If you have 10 volts coming in here, and these two resistors are both 10 kilo ohms, you will have half the supply voltage over here, hence the name voltage divider. You can change the ratio by changing the value of these to R1 and R2. If you increase 1 and decrease 2, the voltage will go down, and vice versa. It's a very handy piece of knowledge to have for that purpose. And voltage dividers are used, well, virtually everywhere. When the moment you try and interface the real world with a microcontroller, you're going to construct some kind of a voltage divider. You can also use a variable resistor as a voltage divider. You put the 10K variable resistor in here, and the center pin, the wiper, would then be your adjustable output. That just makes it a lot easier. So if it's set to exactly in the middle, it will give you half the voltage, half the supply voltage. And here they basically explain it, and here's a calculation where you can calculate the value of the voltage you will get in the voltage divider. But they didn't give us any figures there, so we can't actually do a calculation. We can just look at the formulas. So the summary, Kirchhoff's current law states that at any point in the circuit where two or more conductors are joined, the sum of the currents flowing into that point is equal to the sum of the currents flowing away from the point. His voltage law states that the voltage between any 2 points in a circuit is equal to the sum of the voltage drop along any path connecting those points. We can use these laws in conjunction with Ohm's law to calculate the equivalent values of resistors in series and parallel or shunt. When two or more resistors are connected in series, the combined resistance is the sum of the individual resistances. When two or more resistors are connected in parallel, the reciprocal of the equivalent parallel resistance is the sum of the reciprocals of the individual resistances. It's easier just to know the formula. Voltage divider consists of two resistors in series with an output voltage measured across one of the resistors. The formula for the output voltage of the voltage divider is this. Right, so we get to the questions. Marty says you guys must answer, not me. Okay, I will see if I can get that right. Right, two 10K resistors are connected in parallel. If the voltage from a battery across the resistors sets up a current of 5 milliamp in the one resistor, how much current flows in the second resistor?
E.
Is that delta?
Yes.
Okay, that is correct. Two resistors are connected in series to a 9-volt battery. The voltage across one of the resistors is 5 volt. What is the voltage across the other resistor?
4 volts.
4 volt, that's A. That is correct. In a parallel circuit with a voltage source and several branched resistors, what relationship does the total current have to the current in the branched or the branch currents? Okay, we said the total that goes in on the one side is the total that comes out on the other side, and they branch between the resistors. So that I'm not allowed to answer. You guys must answer.
I'll take a chance at B.
B is correct.
Bravo.
Bravo. That's bravo. That's very good. Right. That is, yeah, the total equals the sum of the branch current. So whatever goes in on the one side comes out the other side. Add it, if there's 1 amp going in one side, it comes out the other side. Two resistors are connected in series. The combined resistance is 1,200 ohms. If one of the resistors is 800 ohms, what is the value of the other one?
400.
400.
That is correct. All right, let me change to that page. That will help. A 100 ohm resistor is connected in series with a 200 ohm resistor. The equivalent resistance of the two resistors is.
300.
That is correct.
Charlie.
Sorry, shall I say again?
Oh, sorry, Charlie.
Charlie, that is correct, yes. Charlie, 300 ohms. A 100 ohm resistor is connected in parallel with a 200 ohm resistor. The equivalent resistance of the two resistors is. Right. Now, like I said, let's do our calculation. We pull our calculator closer and we say 100 and 200. So it's 100 plus 200. So it's 66.6. So if you round it off, it will be 67. So we'll say it's B. We can do it in another way as well. I mean, I did it in 2 steps now, but I can do it in one as well. 100, that, plus 200, that, that, that. Right. Go. So that's the other way of doing it. Or you can do I'm not going to do it another time. You can use the 1/. It depends on how much you want to write. So we've got that correct. Yeah, I answered this question now, but it's just easier on the screen. So you can go and fight it out with your calculator. And I would suggest don't use the one on the phone or don't use the one on a computer screen because you can't take that into the exam room. You have to use a normal non-programmable calculator, and it helps a lot if you're familiar with your calculator when you sit there and you want to do a calculation. So practice with a calculator that you're going to actually use on the exam day. Right, so three light bulbs are connected in series. Which of the following statements is necessarily true? Right.
Bravo.
I went Charlie. No, where am I? I'm in the wrong question. Sorry.
Okay, 7.
Oh, no, I went Alpha. I think I went yes.
You know what the correct answer for 7 is actually A. The current flowing through each of the bulbs is identical because they connected in series. So current didn't split. The current is identical through each one of them. So the answer there is A. And if we go back, let's just go and see why we say that. We've got a bit of time, so it's not a... I think it's a... What's that one? Now, for some reason, I just can't find it. They say it in one sentence.
Is it the globe's like a resistor, so there's a voltage
Correct,
drop
yes.
through the first resistor?
Yeah, so what happens is, but the current through the series circuit is okay. Here it is. At any point in a circuit where two or more conductors are joined, the sum of the okay, well that's the parallel one. We want the series one. Oh, man.
Is it not that figure below 6.2 that you
Uh,
explained to us?
Let me just see. Yeah, I did. I can remember saying it, but now I can't. You say 6.2, that 6.3, 6.2 shows resistors.
You have the two resistors in series, but the
Series,
current flow is the
the
same.
same through both of them. Correct. That is correct. But now 6.2.
Yeah, just below that diagram, it says it shows two resistors connected in series so that the same current flows through both.
Through both of them. So that brings me to the answer that I've given. Let's just go back to the answers at the bottom here. Right. So through each of the bulbs is identical. Not true, because there will be a voltage drop through the first one. That is B. Cannot be that. The resistance is not necessarily identical. So C, it cannot be C. The light given off by each bulb is identical. That's also not necessarily true. So the only correct answer there is A. Right. Two light bulbs are connected in parallel to the main supply. One of them blows and becomes an open circuit. No current can flow through it. What will happen to the current flow through the bulb that is still working?
See,
Correct. C. Nothing will happen to the bulb. It will still use the same current, and it will just carry on as if nothing happened. So C is indeed correct. The output voltage from a voltage divider with two equal resistances will be. I said that.
A, I think.
No, A is not correct.
C.
C.
C is correct. Yes. Voltage divider. So if both resistances are equal, it's going to divide the voltage exactly in half. So it will be half the input voltage. So C is correct. Oh, here's a nice one. You can do some math again. That makes it so much easier. So we've got 44 resistors connected, and they have got a value of 2.2K. So let's say 2,200. We do that to it, and we times that by 44. And then we do that to that again, and that will give us 50. So that would be a 50 ohm. Now, there's another way of getting to this answer. In radio, dummy loads are 50 ohms because your radio is designed for an impedance of 50 ohms. Your coax cable is 50 ohms, and your antenna must be matched for 50 ohms. So if you're not going to connect or make a 50 ohm dummy load, then you've got a serious problem. But doing the math is always the better answer, because if you do the math correct, it's either right or wrong. It can't be somewhere in between. So if you are right and the cleverest oak on earth is wrong, he's still wrong. Right, and I think that's the end of this chapter. Is there any questions? Marty says she's got a question, so let's hear. Let me just mute myself and then. RC, Niemand, you've got your hand up, so let me answer your question first.
Yes. Question 8. The two light bulbs that are connected in parallel and the
Yes.
one bulb blows. Wouldn't the current double and not be the same? Because if it's in parallel, the total current is the sum of the two currents in the parallel connection. So the one connection is severed. So wouldn't the current double then?
No, it won't. And the reason for that is the moment the two bulbs, say for argument's sake, draw 10 amps. And they always draw 10 amps. When they switch on, they draw 10 amps. When you take one away, so when they're on, they're 5 amp, 5 amp. So when we take one away, the current will drop in the circuit, but the one that had 5 amp will still only use 5 amp. So the current in that light will stay the same. And the easy way to explain it is that your house's lights are connected in parallel. So when you switch lights off, the total current gets less, but the light that stays on still draws the same current. So the current stays the same throwing through that particular bulb, but the current flow in the total circuit changes. But the question is through the bulb. They specifically ask the question through current flowing through the bulb. So that particular bulb will still use only the correct or the same amount of current. Obviously, then, like I explained, the current in the total circuit will go down because one of the lights stopped drawing current. But it's like you switching off lights and trying to save energy or save electricity. The one light doesn't go brighter when your kitchen light doesn't go brighter when you switch the bedroom light off. So that's the answer there.
It makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. If you can also assign values to the circuit, and then if you'll see when we get to the power section, you can then do the calculation, and if you do the calculation, you'll see that the total current drops, but the current through that particular light bulb stays exactly the same. Any other questions? And you can check if there's hands.
Just to add on to that, that's why light bulbs are not connected in series.
Correct. Yeah. Otherwise, if the bedroom one go, then all of the others are dead. Right. Marty's got a question. We are waiting. Okay, I'm going to mute.
If you go to question, sorry, let me grab my mic. If you go to question 10, Henry?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're talking to me.
Well, I'm asking you the question. If you go to question 10, just for I've never asked this question before and I only thought of it now. What would happen if I use a 75 ohm dummy load instead of the usual norm of 50? Would it?
Look, you will probably. Let me unmute myself.
Yeah.
You will probably have some kind of measurement instrument attached to your radio or between the radio and the dummy load in order to do the adjustments. And because you've got an impedance mismatch, you will have, let's call it for argument's sake, something like SWR, standing wave ratio, that will come back and influence your readings. So you will very successfully detune your radio in the process of trying to make it better. And it's a very important to have the antenna matched or the dummy load matched to the radio. And yeah, I don't know. I've never come across a dummy load of any other value. So, but I guess you can. I mean, technically, we've got a dummy load in our workshop where we test the audio equipment because sometimes we need to like try and get 100 watts out of an amplifier, and if you have to listen to that for half an hour, you go nuts. So we've got a resistor bank that we've made up to be equal to 8 ohms so that we can actually we've got two of them for left and right, and we use that to test the amplifier to see whether it can actually handle the power. Any other question?
To add on to that then, so you know, obviously our standard transceivers are 50 ohm, but then just to explain further, if the transceiver was 75 ohms, that's when you would have a matching dummy load of 75 ohms, correct?
Correct. Yes, you will always match. If your TV, if the old box TVs, you know, when we still had antennas on the roof, those they were working on 75 ohms. They didn't transmit, but the why they made it 75 ohms, I've never actually asked that question, and I'll actually go and look it up.
Coax was cheaper.
Well, I guess so. The reason why the coax is so much cheaper is because they manufactured it in such volumes that it was ridiculous.
But that's
And,
also 75 ohm coax anyway, so yeah, it
that's
matches
it. Now,
then, yeah.
you know, you can use, they do use the 75 ohm on antennas to match. They call it gamma match. So sometimes you use 50 ohm cable and sometimes you use 75 ohm cable to make yourself a gamma match. And so yeah,
Loop antennas.
Well, that's it. You know what? I don't know exactly. I'll have to go and look up exactly where they use it, but you get like your folded dipole has got a matching a piece of coax inside. Sometimes they roll it up, sometimes they thread it through the loop just to get the length, and then your feed line will come in. The negative will go onto the one side of the folded dipole, and the center core will go into the coax and loop through the coax and then go to the other side of the folded dipole. And that is the matching circuit, so that the dipole, when you measure it at the connector plug, gives you 50 ohms. And yeah, so that's we also use what we call Balun. We'll look. We'll get to this in the book later, but it's also a transformer that is used for 50 ohm to, for instance, 200 ohm match or two. I mean, I don't know what the. I think the antenna with the worst impedance, if we can call it that, is the end-fed half wave, because there you need a transformer of 49 to 1 and sometimes 67 to 1. So you get 1 to 1, 1 to 4, and then I mean, whatever, depends on different antennas, has got different impedances and different matching uh, devices to get it matched. So sometimes you add capacitors. When we get to capacitors in AC circuits, there's also a calculation what you can do there by adding a capacitor on an AC circuit. It acts like a resistor, and you can match the impedance with that. Any other questions? Stefan, did you have your hand up there?
Yes.
Right.
So you will be able to measure with a normal multimeter on ohms the resistance of a antenna if it does have one in, even if it's very small.
You know what? That is a problem that causes a lot of confusion. Um, the antenna works on an AC circuit, an alternating current circuit, which is very high frequency. So you can't measure DC resistance on the antenna. As a matter of fact, if you measure a folded dipole, you're going to measure a short circuit. It's actually at that frequency. Now, if I don't know whether you're going to be there on Saturday, but we've got measuring instruments that makes it easier, and then they measure the impedance or the impedance of the circuit of the antenna. So it's they call it resistance, but it's not actually that. They measure it in ohm, but they should have gotten another unit to use for impedance because it causes confusion. But it's because it works on an AC circuit, so it's like a capacitor. If you measure a capacitor in ohms, you'll get a reading from it, and then eventually it will go open circuit once the capacitor is fully charged up. But if you connect that to an AC circuit, it changes the whole dynamic, and we'll get to that. But no, you can't take a multimeter and measure 50 ohms. That 50 ohms also varies with frequency. So that antenna might be tuned at, for argument's sake, 145, 500 megahertz. But and on that frequency, you tune it for 50 ohms. But if you go to 160 megahertz, then the antenna is no longer 50 ohms. Then it's 49 or 30 ohms or much higher, depends on the different antennas. And I've actually did an antenna for one of the students that passed the previous exam, and the antenna that he purchased was just slightly too short for the frequency. And I put a little extension on the top, and he thought this looks really bad, and he took it off. And I saw the antenna, I said, but you can't use it like that. You must put that piece back because it's necessary. So that just, and then I showed him how narrow that antenna's bandwidth is. With that little piece missing, it's completely out. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure. Gentlemen, I have another meeting that's starting at 8:15. So unfortunately tonight we can't take over the world like we. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said cheers everyone. 73
Cheers,
ons
Peter.
praat later.
Thanks for being here.
Bye, Peter.
Well,
Okay,
well.
7-3.
Okay, thanks, Henry.
73, William.
Thank you.
Yes, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Good night.
Bye. Bye.
See you all Saturday.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Ons sê ons is klaar.
Skus, ek het regtig nie bedoel om 'n can of worms oop te maak nie.
Nee, ons het tyd gehad.
Ek het net gewonder.